Based on the way the film was marketed and the early reactions to challengers, I went into this film expecting Tashi Duncan to be an incredibly manipulative and devious but super fun femme fatale. You know, her pulling the strings behind the scenes intentionally and toying with these men's emotions just for fun. I was completely shocked to find that she's actually an incredibly tragic figure. I think it's incredibly relevant that everything we learn about these characters, every moment we spend with them, is framed through the lens of their relationships with each other. We only learned anything about Tashi's family or Patrick's background through casual conversations these characters have with each other. They never have any meaningful interactions with anyone other than each other. And it's because of that framework that we can't take anything that happens in this film at face value. These are all people projecting the best version of themselves, the version that they want to be, to people that they have very intimate and emotional relationships with. Tashi is a character that is introduced to Art and Patrick already on a pedestal. She's this unattainable, almost inhuman goddess that is not a person to them, but a fantasy. But that's not and never been who Tashi is. Tashi, in reality, is just an 18-year-old girl, an 18-year-old black girl nonetheless, who's been told that she has a gift and it is her immense responsibility to nurture that gift so that she can change her and her entire family's life. And it seems to me that Tashi's determination to present herself as very stern and unrelenting is a defense mechanism because she's very aware of the power structures that are normally at play. And if she cedes any power to people like Art and Patrick, they could very quickly start trying to walk all over her. That's why I absolutely agree with Zendaya herself's interpretation that Art is the sneakiest, most backhanded motherfucker in this movie. That's not to say that I think that any of the characters are particularly morally dubious. I think they're all hurt people hurting other people, and all of their actions are reactive instead of being like necessarily aggressive, with the exception of maybe Art, but still. And I think when you start investigating the reasons why Patrick and Art both became with Tashi, like it becomes very clear that there's more going on beneath the surface. The entire reason why Art even went to that party, went to that game, is because Patrick told him that Tashi Duncan was the hottest woman he'd ever seen. The very beginning of his interest in Tashi was because Patrick was interested in her. And so when people say things like Art really loved Tashi, Tashi really loved tennis, and Patrick really loved Art, I think it's missing the point. Because I think the whole point is how deeply interwoven these people's need for each other and tennis became. Especially when you consider the homoeroticism in this movie and what that means for Art and Patrick's relationship and their relationship to Tashi. Because in so many of those early scenes before Patrick wins Tashi's phone number in that match and they like officially start dating, Patrick is like much more enthusiastic about reacting to any opportunity that Tashi gives him. He's the first to jump up on that bed. He offers up the story that they tell in the hotel room. He is very aggressive in like being clear that he is pursuing her. In reality, I think there's a few things happening here. I think both of these men are projecting this kind of manic pixie dream girl like fantasy version of a person who is going to make each of them better in their own individual ways. And I also think that Tashi is an acceptable outlet for a lot of these like pent up feelings that they've been having for each other for a while. And I think the fact that Art is more aggressive in pursuing it, Patrick is more aggressive in pursuing it than Art, is indicative of the fact that Patrick is more realized in his sexuality as a queer man, much more than Art is, who is not yet willing to accept that part of himself. And I think that's one of the main reasons why Art ends up taking it so hard when Patrick and Tashi get together. I mean, like he says in the tennis match, I just don't want to be left out. I feel like he feels like he missed out on like the Tashi of it all, but he also feels like, you know, he's jealous of the fact that Tashi gets to be with Patrick in a fully realized way. And that is why Art pulls some sneaky shit. He is the first person to take Tashi out to lunch and say, I don't think Patrick loves you. I think he might be sleeping with other women. I'm just saying this to protect you. And then he talks to Art and says, I don't think she's taking it seriously. That's the entire reason why they have the fight. Like, I can't imagine if one of your friends did this shit and then she goes and plays this match after they have this terrible fight, which I'll get more into in a minute. And then when Art is there, when she gets hurt, he says, get the fuck out to Patrick when he comes to the room. Imagine if your best friend was with your girlfriend when something like this happened. And instead of saying, hey man, he really loves you, listen to him, like at least listen to him. He was like, no, actually, do you want to go out for drinks later? Like, that is some snake shit. And I genuinely believed that Patrick and Tashi loved each other. I also believe that Patrick genuinely loved Art, and I think it hurt him doubly so to see Art throwing him out and betraying him just as much as it hurt him to see him losing Tashi when she got injured. And the fight scene in the dorm room is so hot, and I love Tashi saying, you're not in my fan club, and I think a lot of people read that as Tashi's arrogance coming to play, and she and Patrick being too similar, too arrogant to really get along with each other. But I think that that is a really beautiful depiction of Tashi's vulnerability. In In this film, Tashi only relates to people through tennis. That is how she forms her connections with both Art and Patrick. And like I said, we don't see her have any connections outside of these two in this movie. We see her mother and her child, and there's almost no scenes that portray any kind of relationship with them at all, because it's unimportant, because the love language of this film is tennis. When Tashi and Patrick are making out in the dorm room and Patrick does not want to talk about the tour, Tashi is feeling insecure. She's asking him about the tour because Art just told her that he might be sleeping with other girls on this tour, and he's trying to brush off the questions. When he's refusing to engage with her about any kind of tennis talk, she sees that as a rejection of herself. When she asks Patrick, "So you're not a member of my fan club?" she is desperately trying to reclaim that feeling that she felt the first night that he met her, when she was a person that he would do anything to be with. And I guarantee you it's because in that moment, she's hearing Art's voice in her head saying he doesn't love you. Tashi has structured her entire life around tennis, so of course she would structure her entire way of looking at relationships around tennis. Just like she says later in the movie about how a tennis match is having to be in love with someone, having to have this intimate relationship back and forth and trust with someone. That's what she wants, but she also wants to win, and that's how she sees love. And Patrick walking out of that dorm room is the first time her entire perception of reality shatters, because in her mind, she won that fight. She won that match, but he still walked away. She still lost him. And that is reflected later on when she loses the match, when she loses everything, and her entire world comes crumbling down. And Tashi as a character throughout the film remains very restrained. She does not like to show emotions. And when she does, it oftentimes leads to questionable decision making. But I think definitively Tashi is a very different character before her accident and after. And I think it's not a coincidence that that coincides with Tashi before breaking up with Patrick and after. Two things that emotionally devastated her, but only one that she could outwardly process.